The Echo in the Attic, Chapter 1, The Photograph That Shouldn't Be. The scent of dust motes, dancing in sunlit beams, and forgotten memories clung to Elizabeth "Lizzie" Thorne the moment she stepped inside the old house in Blackwood Creek, North Carolina. It was a scent both familiar and foreign, a whisper of childhood wrapped in the chill of a recent loss. Lizzie, a pragmatic, successful architect from the relentless concrete jungle of New York City, had returned to this secluded village nestled amongst the brooding, mist-shrouded forests and murky swamps for a singular, unsentimental purpose: to prepare her Aunt Sarah's house for sale. Aunt Sarah, eccentric but deeply loved, had raised Lizzie after her parents' untimely death. She had been a woman of peculiar beliefs, prone to muttering about thinning veils and lost souls in Blackwood Creek. Theories Lizzie had always dismissed with a dismissive wave of her hand and a logical explanation. Lizzie was a woman of blueprints and tangible realities, not village superstitions. Her first day back was dedicated to the attic, a cavern of dusty treasures and forgotten history. Albums, boxes, trunks, each contained a piece of her past. She picked up a thick, leather-bound photo album, its cover cracked with age. Flipping through yellowed pages, she saw faded images of her parents, a younger Aunt Sarah, and herself, a gap-toothed child playing in the overgrown garden. Then, her breath hitched. Her fingers, usually steady, trembled, almost dropping the album. On a page near the end, there was a photograph. Old, clearly taken decades ago, its edges softened by time. But the image was impossible. It was Lizzie, unmistakably her, but not the young, carefree girl she saw in the preceding pages. This was Lizzie now, at 45, her current age, her face, etched with a maturity she recognized in her own reflection, was pale, strained. Her eyes, wide and hollow, held a profound, unsettling terror. She was dressed in strange, old-fashioned clothing, her hair pulled back in a severe bun, and she stood on the very porch of this house, the one she was now trying to sell, a house that looked far more dilapidated, almost derelict, in the photograph. Behind her, a blurred, indistinct figure seemed to loom, a spectral presence in the background. With a growing sense of dread, Lizzie turned the photo over. Scrawled on the back in a faded, shaky hand were 3 lines: Blackwood Creek, the threshold. October 26th, 2045. Don't look back. October 26th, 2045. That was 20 years in the future. 20 years from now. This wasn't just a photo. It was a photograph taken in the future of her as she would be. Or as she would be. A cold, visceral fear, unlike anything her rational mind had ever encountered, began to prickle her skin. This moment, frozen in time, was a terrifying prophecy. The house, usually a source of nostalgic comfort, now felt like a living entity, watching her, its silence suddenly pregnant with chilling possibilities. Lizzie, the pragmatist, found her world tilting on its axis, her carefully constructed logic crumbling under the weight of an impossible, terrifying truth. Chapter 2, The Whispering Walls. The photograph, chillingly real, lay on the dusty attic floor, a tangible impossibility. Lizzie tried to rationalize it. A joke? An elaborate trick? But the archaic quality of the print, the unmistakable aging of the paper, defied logic. It was real, and it was her, in the future. The moment that photograph entered her life, the house began to change. Or perhaps Lizzie's perception of it did. the old grandfather clock in the hall, which had been silent for years, began to chime sporadically, its hands sometimes spinning wildly backward before settling on an impossible time. Faint whispers, like children's voices, would drift from empty rooms, giggles and hushed conversations that vanished the moment she entered. Objects would subtly shift. A teacup moved from the counter to the table. A book she'd just put down would reappear on a different shelf. One afternoon, while sorting through Aunt Sarah's pantry, Lizzie caught a glimpse of her reflection in the glass of a preserved jar. But it wasn't her current reflection. It was a fleeting, translucent image of her younger self, a child's face, wide-eyed and curious, peering back at her from within the jar before dissolving into the murky contents. These were no tricks of light. They were echoes of time, playing on the very fabric of reality. Overwhelmed and increasingly unnerved, Lizzie sought solace in Aunt Sarah's personal belongings, hoping to find a mundane explanation. Instead, she found a lifeline, or perhaps a deeper descent into the bizarre. Tucked beneath Aunt Sarah's mattress, wrapped in a linen cloth, was a stack of journals, meticulously kept over decades. Aunt Sarah's elegant, looping script filled the pages. From the very first entry, it became clear that Aunt Sarah had lived a life immersed in the strange phenomena of Blackwood Creek. She wrote about the house, not just as a home, but as a nexus point, a place where the boundaries of time thin and blur. She spoke of temporal bleed-throughs, where echoes of past and future would manifest, and of lost souls, people who, caught in the temporal flux, became stranded between eras, unable to find their way back. Aunt Sarah's entries became increasingly specific, almost obsessive, detailing her observations, the specific times of day when the whispers were loudest, the strange cold spots that coincided with temporal shifts, and the feeling that she was being watched by unseen presences. She wrote of a key, a way to understand or even control these transitions, to either stabilize the anomaly or to guide the lost souls back to their proper place. "The house holds the key," one entry read, "and the blood of Blackwood Creek will reveal its secrets." Lizzie remembered Aunt Sarah's peculiar habits, her constant watch over the old clock, her frequent walks into the deep woods, her fascination with the local legends. Aunt Sarah wasn't eccentric. She was a witness and a chronicler. She believed in it all. The journal felt like a hand reaching out from the grave, pulling Lizzie deeper into the chilling reality of Blackwood Creek. Her pragmatism buckled under the weight of the impossible. The photograph wasn't a joke, it was a warning. The whispers in the walls were not her imagination. They were the echoes of a fractured timeline. Lizzie, the woman of logic, was trapped in a house where time itself was unraveling. And the chilling implications of Aunt Sarah's words began to permeate her very soul. She needed help, desperately, before she too became one of Blackwood Creek's lost souls. Chapter 3: Old Friends and Ancient Legends. The revelations in Aunt Sarah's journals of temporal anomalies, lost souls, and the house as a nexus point shattered Lizzie's carefully constructed world of logic. She was no longer just cleaning out a house. She was living in a haunted temporal paradox. The increasing oddities, the fleeting glimpses of distorted realities, cemented her fear. She needed help, someone who understood this bizarre reality, someone who wouldn't simply dismiss her as grieving or delusional. There was only one person she could think of: Daniel. Her childhood friend, the one who had always listened patiently to Aunt Sarah's wild tales, who saw wonder where Lizzie saw only superstition. Daniel, who had stayed in Blackwood Creek, becoming a sort of unofficial historian and keeper of the village's strangest legends. Lizzie found him at the local hardware store, his face weathered, but his eyes still held that familiar kindness. She recounted everything: the photograph, the shifting objects, the voices, and finally Aunt Sarah's journals. Daniel listened, his expression grave, but not surprised. "I always knew it, Lizzie," he said, his voice quiet, almost reverent. "Aunt Sarah wasn't crazy. Blackwood Creek, it's always been different. They say it's where two worlds meet, where the veil between what is and what could be is thin." He spoke of the village's deepest legend, the guardians of time and the lost souls. He explained that for centuries, Blackwood Creek had been a place where people would sometimes disappear, only to reappear years later, disoriented and aged, or sometimes not at all, becoming the spectral lost souls that occasionally haunted the mist-shrouded swamps. He spoke of an ancient, forgotten spring beneath the land, a wellspring of raw temporal energy, the source of the anomaly. The old mill, the abandoned well, the ominous, whispering woods, all were connected to this energy. Aunt Sarah believed the house was built directly on a particularly strong ley line, a channel for that energy. Daniel explained, she thought it could be used to stabilize the anomaly, to help the lost find their way, or to control it. And she always believed you had a special connection to it, Lizzie. Said you were born of the soil, touched by time. Lizzie remembered Aunt Sarah's knowing glances, her cryptic remarks about Lizzie's destiny. It wasn't just a house Aunt Sarah left her. It was a burden, a legacy. As they spoke, a new figure appeared in the hardware store. A man in his late 50s, dressed in clothes that seemed slightly out of place, a timeless, almost old-fashioned quality to his tweed jacket and perfectly polished shoes. He had a deep, unsettling gaze and seemed to listen intently, though he never approached them. Daniel subtly nudged Lizzie. "That's him," he whispered. "The stranger. He appeared a few months ago. No one knows where he came from. He watches the old house. People say he knows things." The stranger caught Lizzie's eye, a flicker of something unreadable in his gaze. He offered a curt, almost imperceptible nod, then disappeared down an aisle. "He knows something," Daniel confirmed. "He might be one of the lost souls himself, trying to warn you, or perhaps trying to manipulate the anomaly for his own gain." Back at the house, rereading Aunt Sarah's journals with Daniel's insights, Lizzie discovered a chilling prophecy, a moment of time. Aunt Sarah wrote of a rare astronomical alignment, a peak in the temporal anomaly, occurring only once every few decades, when the boundaries between past, present, and future would almost entirely collapse. "It is the only chance," Aunt Sarah had written, "to mend what is broken, or to be broken by it." The date on the back of the photograph, October 26th, 2045, corresponded precisely with Aunt Sarah's calculations for the next moment of time. It wasn't just a prophecy, it was a deadline. The unsettling truth was now undeniable. Lizzie was caught in a temporal trap, and the future on the photograph was not just a prediction. It was a potential consequence waiting to unfold. The old house, the whispered legends, the cryptic journals, all converged on a single, terrifying truth. And the stranger, a silent observer, added another layer of chilling uncertainty to the unfolding paradox. Chapter 4: Echoes of the Future, Whispers of the Past, the Moment of Time, loomed. A date ripped from the future, screaming from the back of that impossible photograph. Aunt Sarah's journals, now illuminated by Daniel's understanding of Blackwood Creek's ancient legends, painted a terrifying picture. a temporal vortex capable of both mending and breaking. As the ominous date drew closer, the house's temporal anomalies intensified. Lizzie found herself experiencing vivid, disorienting flashbacks, not just of her childhood, but of her own future. She would be standing in the kitchen, and suddenly the room would shift, warp, and she'd find herself in the same kitchen, but years older, surrounded by dusty, decaying furniture. Her face etched with exhaustion and despair, just as it was in the photograph. She'd hear her own voice, raspy and aged, muttering to herself, repeating phrases like, "I should have known," or "It's too late." These were not just visions, they were fragments of a possible future, bleeding into her present. She saw herself, the older Lizzie from the photo, frantically searching the house, her eyes filled with terror, her hands clawing at the walls. The blurry figure in the background of the photo, which had initially seemed indistinct, began to take on a more defined form in these flashes. A tall, gaunt shadow, always just out of focus, always watching. It was both terrifying and utterly captivating, a direct link to the fate the photograph portended. The stranger, too, became a more frequent presence. He appeared at odd hours, always just outside the edges of her vision, lingering at the end of the street or standing silent in the deeper shadows of the woods surrounding the house. One evening, as Lizzie sat on the porch, exhausted and overwhelmed, he emerged from the twilight. "You're playing with fire, Lizzie Thorne," he said, his voice raspy, ancient, like dry leaves rustling. "Time is not a toy. It is a current. Resist it, and you break. Try to control it, and you drown." "Who are you?" Lizzie demanded, her voice trembling despite herself. He stepped closer, and in the dim light, Lizzie saw the profound weariness in his eyes, the almost translucent quality of his skin. "I am a consequence," he whispered, a bitter smile touching his lips. "Like you, a lost soul, caught between the currents. I tried to change the past. Now, I am nothing but an echo." He was one of Aunt Sarah's lost souls, a warning made manifest. He then disappeared back into the shadows as quickly as he had appeared. Driven by a desperate need to understand, Lizzie and Daniel returned to Aunt Sarah's journals. In the very last entries, Aunt Sarah had written of her growing belief that certain individuals, born of the soil in Blackwood Creek, possessed a unique, innate connection to the temporal anomaly. "They are living keys," she wrote, "capable of both harnessing and disrupting the flow of time. Lizzie, she is one of them. She will know when the moment of time arrives, and she must make a choice, to mend or to break." Aunt Sarah had known. She had left the house to Lizzie not just as an inheritance, but as a passing of the torch. The journal also hinted at a secret space within the house, a place where Aunt Sarah had conducted her deepest research, hidden from prying eyes. Beyond the books, where knowledge is stored, one entry cryptically stated, "Daniel and Lizzie searched, tapping along bookshelves, examining floorboards. Finally, behind a heavy antique bookshelf in the library, they discovered a hidden latch. It opened to reveal a narrow, dusty passage leading to a small, circular room. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of old paper and strange metals. Maps covered the walls, annotated with astrological charts and quantum physics equations. And in the center of the room, on a rough wooden table, was an apparatus. It was crude, almost steampunk in its design, a complex array of spinning gears, shimmering crystals, and interconnected wires leading to a central glowing orb. A temporal regulator, Aunt Sarah had called it, a device she believed could either stabilize the anomaly or, if misused, amplify it catastrophically. Lizzie stared at the device, then at the map of Blackwood Creek, marking the ley lines converging on her house. She saw the photograph in her mind's eye, the terrified, future version of herself. It wasn't just a prediction. It was a potential outcome, a consequence of her own choices. Could she use this device to alter her past, to erase her regrets, to live a different life? Or was her true purpose to mend the broken flow of time, to free the lost souls, and prevent others from falling into the very trap that had consumed the stranger? The echoes of the future and the whispers of the past converged, demanding a choice that would define her destiny, not just for herself, but for Blackwood Creek itself. Chapter 5: The Crossroads of Time. The Secret Room. Aunt Sarah's sanctuary of temporal research hummed with a palpable energy. The crude temporal regulator on the table pulsed with a faint rhythmic glow, a heart beating in the core of the anomaly. Lizzie now understood the terrifying choice Aunt Sarah had alluded to: mend or break. The photograph of her future, a chilling premonition, showed the consequences of breaking, of succumbing to despair, of becoming another lost soul trapped in the temporal current. Daniel, his face pale but resolute, looked at Lizzie. She always said you were the key, Lizzie, born of the soil, connected to the anomaly. You have a choice: to use it for yourself, to change your past, or to try and fix it for everyone. The temptation to change her past was immense. The regret of choices unmade, words unspoken, opportunities missed. She could go back, warn her parents, live a different life, one free of the shadows that haunted her. But the stranger's words, "I tried to change the past. Now I am nothing but an echo," reverberated in her mind. And the terror in the eyes of her future self in the photograph. Was it a terror of failure, or a terror of succeeding in the wrong way? The moment of time was hours away. The air in the house grew heavy, charged with an unseen force. The whispers intensified, not just children's voices, but murmurs, cries, snatches of conversations from different eras, layered over each other like a broken radio transmission. The walls seemed to breathe, the very fabric of reality stretching and thinning. Phantom figures flickered in her peripheral vision, translucent men and women in clothes from other centuries, their faces filled with longing and confusion. They were the lost souls, trapped in the temporal currents, seeking an anchor, a way home. The stranger appeared again, this time within the secret room, his translucent form shimmering, almost dissolving. He looked at Lizzie, his ancient eyes filled with a desperate plea. "Don't make my mistake," he rasped, his voice barely audible. "Don't try to control what cannot be controlled. The anomaly is a river. You cannot turn back its tide. You can only guide it." He revealed his story, a man from the late 19th century, a scholar obsessed with the legends of Blackwood Creek. He had discovered the anomaly, attempted to harness its power to prevent a personal tragedy, and had been consumed, becoming one of the very souls he had sought to understand. He was the gaunt shadow in the photo, the blurred figure behind Lizzie's future self, eternally bound to the house, trying to warn, trying to guide. Lizzie looked at the temporal regulator. Aunt Sarah's notes explained its function. It could either amplify the anomaly, allowing for greater temporal manipulation, or, if calibrated correctly, it could act as a stabilizer, grounding the energy, helping the lost find their footing, and perhaps even closing the most volatile breaches. The answer became clear. Her purpose wasn't to change her past. It was to protect the future, to safeguard Blackwood Creek from its own temporal chaos, and to bring peace to the suffering lost souls. It was to complete Aunt Sarah's unfinished work, but with a different intention, not to control, but to heal. As the final minutes ticked down to the moment of time, the house groaned around them. The air crackled with raw energy. The phantom figures of the lost souls materialized more clearly, their expressions of anguish and confusion almost unbearable. Lizzie, guided by Aunt Sarah's meticulous notes, began to calibrate the device, her hands steady, her resolve ironclad. She was at the crossroads of time, and her choice would determine not only her own fate, but the fate of Blackwood Creek and the many souls trapped within its temporal currents. The photograph, a terrifying prophecy, now held a new, hopeful meaning, a warning she could avert, a future she could rewrite, not by altering the past, but by accepting her unique role in the present. Chapter 6. The Eye of the Storm. The air in the secret room thickened, growing heavy with the raw, vibrating energy of the temporal anomaly. The moment of time was upon them. Outside, the wind howled through the ancient trees of Blackwood Creek, a mournful symphony accompanying the escalating chaos within the house. The grandfather clock in the hall began to strike erratically, its chimes overlapping, echoing from different minutes, different hours, even different centuries. The lost souls materialized with terrifying clarity. Figures from every era flickered through the room. A pioneer woman in homespun, her eyes wide with bewilderment. A Civil War soldier, his uniform tattered, a ghostly rifle clutched in his hand. A flapper from the roaring 20s, her laughter a silent, spectral echo. They floated, confused and anguished, their silent pleas for release filling the suffocating air. The stranger, his form more solid now, stood beside Lizzie, his gaze fixed on the temporal regulator, a flicker of hope in his ancient eyes. "It's now, Lizzie," Daniel whispered, his face pale, but his grip firm on her arm. "The peak. You have to make the choice." Lizzie took a deep breath, pushing down the last vestiges of fear, letting determination rise. She focused on the temporal regulator, Aunt Sarah's intricate device. It was a complex array of gears, crystals, and circuits. But Aunt Sarah's final notes, scrawled in hurried, frantic hand, were clear. The heart of the anomaly pulses. To ground it, to release, you must align the frequencies, not to manipulate, but to resonate, to bring balance. With trembling but steady hands, Lizzie began to adjust the delicate dials, aligning the shimmering crystals, following Aunt Sarah's precise calculations. The central orb, which had been glowing with a chaotic, pulsating light, began to stabilize. Its glow softened, becoming a steady, soothing hum. As the device whirred, a profound shift occurred. The chaotic whispers of the lost souls began to harmonize, their fragmented cries coalescing into a single, sorrowful, yet peaceful chorus. The spectral figures, no longer panicked, turned their gazes towards the glowing orb, a magnetic pull drawing them towards its soothing light. The stranger stepped forward, his translucent hand reaching towards the orb. "Thank you, Lizzie Thorne," he whispered, his voice gaining a momentary clarity, a fleeting echo of the man he once was. "You have set us free. You have mended what I broke." He nodded, a profound sense of peace washing over his ancient features. Then, with a final, radiant smile, he dissolved into the light emanating from the orb, his essence finally at rest. One by one, the other lost souls followed, their ghostly forms fading into the orb's warm glow, their silent anguish replaced by expressions of serene acceptance. The room, once crowded with spectral presences, slowly emptied, leaving only the soft hum of the regulator and the faint, lingering scent of petrichor and ancient wood. As the last spectral figure vanished, a profound silence descended upon the house. Not the suffocating silence of grief, but the calming quiet of peace. The erratic chimes of the grandfather clock settled into a steady, rhythmic tick-tock. The strange cold spots vanished. The house, while still ancient, felt grounded, secure. Lizzie looked at Daniel, tears streaming down her face, a mixture of exhaustion and profound relief. She had done it. She hadn't altered the past. She had stabilized the present, brought peace to the lost, and saved herself from the terrifying future depicted in the photograph. The fear in her future self's eyes was gone. She had averted that fate by choosing selflessness over personal desire. The photograph, still lying on the attic floor, now seemed to Lizzie like a relic of a potential future she had heroically avoided. It was no longer a prophecy of doom, but a testament to a choice made, a battle won. Blackwood Creek, once a place of terrifying anomalies, now felt like a place of profound, quiet magic. Its temporal currents no longer chaotic, but flowing gently, harmoniously. Lizzie, the pragmatist, had faced the impossible, embraced the mystical, and emerged not broken, but transformed. Chapter 7. The Guardian of the Threshold. The days and weeks following the moment of time brought a profound, almost ethereal calm to Blackwood Creek. The house, once a nexus of temporal chaos, now hummed with a stable, gentle energy. The grandfather clock kept perfect time. The ghostly whispers and fleeting apparitions of lost souls had vanished, replaced by the comforting creaks and murmurs of an old house settling into a peaceful existence. The fear, the gnawing dread that had clung to Lizzie, dissipated, replaced by a quiet strength and an unexpected sense of purpose. Lizzie did not return to New York. The bustling city, her successful architectural career, now felt distant, almost irrelevant. The life she had built there, once so meticulously planned, seemed hollow in comparison to the profound, cosmic significance of what she had experienced in Blackwood Creek. She realized that her true calling, her unique connection to this land, lay not in shaping physical structures, but in safeguarding the very fabric of time. She became the new guardian of the threshold, a quiet, living extension of Aunt Sarah's legacy, but with a crucial difference. Aunt Sarah had been obsessed with understanding and perhaps manipulating the anomaly. Lizzie's purpose was to protect it, to ensure its stability, to be its silent, vigilant keeper. She continued to study Aunt Sarah's journals, delving deeper into the intricate workings of the temporal regulator, learning to sense the subtle shifts in the temporal currents, the faintest whispers of imbalance. Daniel became her unwavering confidant and partner in this unique mission. He helped her document Aunt Sarah's findings, ensuring the knowledge was preserved, not for exploitation, but for understanding and protection. Together, they quietly became the custodians of Blackwood Creek's extraordinary secret, a truth known only to a select few. The house, no longer just a property to be sold, became her sanctuary, her laboratory, her living testament to the impossible. She renovated it slowly, lovingly, not for profit, but to preserve its unique connection to the anomaly, to create a space that honored its mystical heritage. She established a small, private foundation, quietly funding research into paranormal phenomena, always with an eye toward understanding and protecting, rather than exploiting. Lizzie occasionally pulled out the old photograph from the attic. The image of her terrified older self still stared back, but now it held no fear for her. It was a ghost of a future averted, a powerful reminder of the choice she had made, a testament to her courage and selflessness. She had stared into the abyss of her own potential despair and chosen a different path. Her own life, once seemingly defined by career and ambition, found a deeper, more meaningful purpose. She was no longer running from her past or her unique heritage. She embraced it. She spent her days tending to the house, studying the anomaly, and enjoying the quiet rhythms of village life. She found a profound peace in the stillness of Blackwood Creek, in the rustle of the ancient forests, and the gentle ebb and flow of time, no longer a chaotic force, but a harmonious current. The old house, once a source of terror, was now a living testament to acceptance, resilience, and the quiet magic that lay hidden just beneath the surface of the ordinary. Lizzie Thorne, the pragmatist, and found her true self in the heart of a temporal paradox, becoming the silent guardian of a world far stranger and more beautiful than she had ever dared to imagine. Her past, once filled with regret, now unfolded into a future of purpose, her journey complete, yet forever connected to the timeless secrets of Blackwood Creek.